Russell Westbrook may have finally found a home in the NBA, and he's lucky enough that he's now with a championship contender. Ever since leaving the OKC Thunder in 2019, Westbrook has struggled to find a team that wants him. He bounced around a few times in Houston, Washington, and Los Angeles before the Clippers waived him. However, the Denver Nuggets didn't waste any time taking him in the free agency market at the request of none other than Nikola Jokic himself. So, if you're wondering why the best player in the world wants Westbrook, you might want to stick around to find out. When you look at Russell Westbrook's resume, there's no doubt that he's a true Hall of Famer. He's an MVP, a multi-time All-Star, a multi-time All-NBA player, and the league's all-time leader in triple-doubles. He's the only one who's ever averaged a triple-double more than once, and he did that 4 times in his career. That's why he's listed as one of the 75 greatest players of all time. But while he's an all-time great from an individual standpoint, especially with his ridiculous stats and historically unmatched athleticism and explosiveness, Westbrook hasn't had the same success his peers enjoyed. He's not an NBA champion and has struggled to get back to championship contention. On top of that, ever since leaving the OKC Thunder in 2019, he hasn't found a team that's willing enough to give him a long-term home while making it clear that they want him on the roster.
Now they're back this time. They're set. Oh, Russell Westbrook!
He had a good one-year stint in Houston, where he and James Harden lost to the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers. Russ went on to average a triple-double on the non-competitive Wizards team. When he got to the Lakers, however, he became the ultimate scapegoat. Whenever things weren't going right for that team, everyone was quick to press the blame it on Westbrook button. Moving to the Clippers changed the perception of him because he did well as the team's starting point guard. But when they got James Harden, Russ became irrelevant with the Clippers, barely performing well enough off the bench during the regular season and stinking it up during the playoffs. So when the Clippers traded him to Utah during the 2024 offseason, everyone saw that he was struggling to find a home. The Jazz promptly waived Westbrook to free up some cash and a roster spot because they didn't think that a 35-year-old washed-up all-star point guard could still do anything for them. Interestingly, however, as soon as Russ got waived, there was one man who openly said that he wanted Westbrook on his team.
Jamal Murray to Jokic. Jokic backs up for the win! Yeah!
We're talking about the 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic, widely considered the greatest player on the planet. While Jokic doesn't like talking to the media or making demands from his team, he was adamant in asking the Denver Nuggets front office to send Westbrook an offer as soon as possible. For some people, it seems like Jokic was breaking character when he openly said that he wanted Westbrook on his team. This is a guy who barely makes a sound and doesn't request the Nuggets to give him a specific player. He just simply balls and dominates without making a fuss about it. That's why asking his team to sign Russ is kind of surprising to a lot of people. But if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. Since winning the championship in 2023, the Denver Nuggets almost always rely on a 2-man game between Jokic and Jamal Murray. The ball always goes through the Serbian big man, who allows his teammates to play off of him by cutting to the basket or spotting up outside the three-point area. But this 2-man game didn't work during the playoffs. Jokic and Murray were excellent against the Los Angeles Lakers in the first round. Meanwhile, in the second round, Murray was a bit too inconsistent against the Minnesota Timberwolves, even though the Joker dominated the opposing front line.
Jokic, here comes the 2-time MVP, back rim, no, Jokic again!
When Murray isn't doing well, it's supposed to be up to the role players and the bench to pick things up. That wasn't exactly the case, because the bench players were completely non-existent in that series. On top of that, whenever these two players weren't on the floor, Denver had problems setting up its offense, especially with Reggie Jackson playing subpar basketball as a reserve point guard. Things turned sour for the Nuggets when Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, their designated 3-and-D starter, left as a free agent, leaving a lot of holes open on that team. Denver didn't make any strong moves during the offseason, as this was the second year in a row that this team let an important piece go. In 2023, they let Bruce Brown, who was consistent during their championship run, sign with another team. This time, it's KCP. This is probably the reason why Jokic finally broke character and demanded the team to sign Russell Westbrook. He probably saw that the Nuggets front office was a bit too relaxed, believing that the duo of Jokic and Murray could take them to the finals once more. But with a lot of different teams around the league improving their rosters, another title run for the Nuggets seems to be doubtful, especially if this team doesn't want to improve its current personnel. So, where does Westbrook fit into all this? Let's be clear, Brody's best days are far behind him already. He's likely never going to be a starter in the league ever again, and that's perfectly fine because he's turning 36 next season. He's lost a lot of athleticism, which was the only part of his game that truly made him special. On top of that, he doesn't shoot the ball really well, often struggling to hit jump shots. Westbrook isn't going to be playing heavy minutes alongside both Jokic and Murray because the Nuggets seem contented with focusing their offense on a two-man game. With his lack of an outside shot, he's going to be the odd man out on that two-man offense. So, it's clear that Westbrook is going to find minutes as Jamal Murray's backup. Well, that isn't game-changing stuff, but Jokic specifically asked the Nuggets to bring him in because he knows what Russ brings to the table. Regardless of what people have been saying about him the past 3 seasons or so, Westbrook loves balling out when he's given a chance. He's a dog who loves going at full speed as long as the coach gives him the green light.
To keep the ball alive. Westbrook to the basket. Lays it up.
He may be on the older side of the calendar, but he's still an all-energy guy who gives 100% into what he's doing, whether it's driving to the basket, making plays for others, or defending opposing guards. That's why it makes sense that Jokic wants him on the roster. The Nuggets tend to have a lethargic second unit, especially when both Jokic and Murray are resting on the bench. Their role players lack energy and competitiveness. But with Russ bringing his experience and competitive edge as a veteran, he's going to force that bench to run with him and play up to his energy. The bench players need someone to look up to whenever the main guys aren't on the floor. And that's where Brody fits into all this. Still, there's a glaring problem that needs to be resolved, and we're talking about the Denver Nuggets' inability to find a good replacement for KCP's three-point shooting. He may not be the best shooter in the world, but KCP stretched the floor and allowed Jokic and Murray to have the freedom to set the offense up. Christian Braun is set to replace KCP as the starting shooting guard, but he's been a mediocre outside shooter since entering the league. Peyton Watson, who's a good defender, doesn't come with KCP's outside shot. This is where Westbrook's addition becomes questionable. A year ago, at least Reggie Jackson could hit timely three-pointers off the bench. On the other hand, Brody was never a capable three-point shooter his entire career. This is why people are wondering how well Russ could fit into a team that requires its players to learn how to play off Jokic. We know that the big Serbian is more effective when he has shooters around him because it forces the defense to think twice about doubling him in the paint. In fact, Serbia nearly defeated the United States in the semifinals of the Olympics because Jokic had plenty of shooters around him. But outside of Murray and Michael Porter Jr., the Nuggets don't look like they have someone who can readily hit open shots off of a Jokic pass.
Adams gives it back to Russ. Deep shot.
Westbrook, through his entire career, always needed the ball in his hands to be effective because he couldn't spot up for an open shot. Even though he's lost his athletic ability, he hasn't changed his game a lot. He still needs the ball to be effective. Still, a year ago, he showed the willingness to adjust his game a bit, taking fewer jumpers and focusing more on playing good defense. But if he's playing with Jokic, he needs to learn how to adjust. He struggled to do that when he was playing with LeBron James in LA, where he still needed to be the one handling the ball to be useful on offense. But when he didn't have the ball, he was useless as a spot-up shooter. So if he can't shoot jumpers, the best role for him is to be a cutter whenever Jokic is playing on the high post. If you look at the way the Golden State Warriors play, they've had success with guards who can't hit outside shots. Sean Livingston was an automatic mid-range shooter, but he was also incredibly effective at cutting to the basket. Meanwhile, Gary Payton II lives in the dunker arena for the Warriors by learning how to play off Curry and Green to get close to the basket where he's automatic. Westbrook can follow Livingston and GPT-2's examples and learn how to become more of a cutter than a player who needs to have the ball in his hands.
Clippers are down by 8. They've led by as many as 8. Westbrook inside. Oh, what the stuff!
At this point in his career, he needs to be more adaptable than ever because it's not every day that the best player in the world vouches for you and demands the front office to get you on the team. Still, that doesn't readily solve the outside shooting problems for this team, especially when all the other players are mediocre and bad shooters. This is why the Westbrook addition can be a make-or-break situation for the Nuggets. It's true that he can help solve the problem of not having a backup point guard behind Murray, but he also exacerbates the lack of shooting on this roster. So, at this point, it's also a make-or-break situation for Westbrook, because this is where we see just how much he's willing to change his game to become part of a winning culture.